Hello, everybody, and welcome to today's very special webinar, Key Ingredients to Having a Smooth Opening. I do have a little prop here. I've never done props before, but, we've been doing this for 4 years. Can you guys see this? My little school bus. We have little kids in the house. Whenever I see a book, I don't know if you're like this, if you see a book that has a school bus in it, you're like, I got to get that. I love school buses, and I love seeing like some of the old school bus drawings too, those more rounder school buses. And anyway, so we're talking today about key ingredients to smooth openings, and the panelists have all told us that this was, some have said that this is the best opening they've ever had. One person said, well, yeah, that's true, but it's only my first year here. So, okay, that's fair. We'll say that anyway. Still true. Others have just said they had a very smooth opening. And so our goal today is to go into what is a smooth opening for starters, and what were those ingredients that did that, and what things, maybe for those who have been doing it longer than the first year, what did they do differently to make it such a smooth opening? And we believe this is very much a participation type of webinar, and so we want you to please punch in your questions. If you have a question for a specific person, or you have something for the panel in general, please just go ahead and shoot that in the comment section whenever you have that moment to do that. If you have something that you want to add, say, you know what, we did the same thing, or we did something else, I will bring this into the webinar. So even though you're not on camera, we want your voice to still be heard in that way. So please be engaged. The goal of all these webinars is always to just help us all get better, because what you guys do matters, and the safe transportation of children every day is critical. And so if you can learn a trick from somebody, that it's been worth it. So just as a reminder, all of our webinars are recorded and are posted usually the next day, even sometimes before the day is out. So if you miss it, in terms of you had a colleague that you wanted to see it, you can pass it along to them. You want your superintendent, you want to, one person was talking to us during our dry run yesterday about wanting certain technology. Well, they could send that link to their superintendent later and say, see, this is how it's been working for some other people. So that's a little ulterior motive, but it's true, that might help them to see all of your plight and have maybe a better understanding of what it is you do. And we know superintendents also have a very heavy load on their docket as well. If you could go to the next slide, McKaylee, thank you so much. I appreciate McKaylee Norris, who's running the back end here. I want to introduce our panelists. We have Candi Buck, who's with Huntley Project School District in Montana. And I just told her earlier that I believe she may be, and I hope I don't offend if I do have, I don't believe we've ever had a Montana panelist before. And I hope I don't get angry mail from somebody who said, yes, I was on in 2022. But we have Laura, how do you say your last name for me? Neiswonger? All right, nailed it. I'm a Dorico. I get all types of variations for my name. Redbank Valley School District in Pennsylvania. We got Jared Richmond, Carl Junction Schools in Missouri. Debbie Schomisch, is that correct? All right, I know I should have asked you this yesterday. Farwell Schools in Michigan. So we have some critical voting states here too, but we won't get into politics today. But we do have some, Pennsylvania and Michigan. Alisa Roman with Lewiston Public Schools. And I am Rick Dorico. I'm the moderator. I'm also the director of public relations at Transfinder. So without further ado, I'm going to ask, just going through the list there, Candi, we'll start with you, and Laura, Jared, Debbie, and Alisa. Share a little bit about your career path, a little bit about, how long maybe you've been at your district, and then a little bit about your district in terms of how many students you transport, or how many buses you're running every day, something to kind of give us a sense of where you're coming from.
I've been at Huntley Project Schools for 23 years. I've been in the transportation position for 3 years as the manager. We transport 445 students on 9 routes, regular routes every day. We then have an additional 4 special ed routes and 1 homeless route that we run. We have a total in our school district of 775 students, but we do only transport 445.
Great, great. Thank you very much. Next up, Laura.
I am in Pennsylvania, Redbank Valley School District. We have about 975 students in our building, but we also transport to like our non-public schools, and that adds an additional about 100 students that I have to transport. Total number of buses that we have are 17 plus 2 career center buses for technical schools, and then we have an additional 17 vans for special ed runs that we run here. We're a Title I district, so we're low income, but we do the best we can to get everybody where they need to be. I've been with the school district for a year, and I've been in transportation for about 6 months. My unique perspective comes from the fact that my husband is a school bus driver, and I have a very close relationship with our bus contractor, and so we are in constant communication as needed. So we hit the ground running this year.
On top of that, they went to Route Finder Plus in August 1st.
First day of school was August 21st. Parents had bus information by like the 16th of August. And it was a lot of extra work put in, but it was so worth it.
Awesome. I was amazed when I heard that, I got to tell you. So that was a really good story. Thank you, Laura. Next up, Jared Richmond, a returned veteran here to these webinars.
Yeah, Carl Junction, we're about 130 square miles, give or take. We're a mix of urban and rural. We have several cities that falls in our district as well. We're about 3,600 students, 38 routes over the course of a day. And we transport around 2,300 a day.
Okay, great. Thank you. Alisa.
Good morning, and we can still say that. So my name is Alisa Roman. I am the Director of Nutrition and Transportation for Lewiston Public Schools. We have just shy of 6,000 students in our district. Our busing, we do outsource and contract, but we do all the routes in-house. So right now we have over 359 runs that we're doing daily with routes that's back and forth. So routes a little less. We have over 100 vehicles on the road at any given time. It's a really good time. I really love the topic of this particular webinar because ingredients fits both of my jobs. So thank you for that. Yeah, no, we have multiple special education. We have about 328 kids alone on outplacements. And then we run everything from our from schools, plus we also have our routes for extended aftercare that we do in many of our schools. We are a very high free and reduced district with almost 92% of our students needing transportation in an urban setting. Yeah, so that's a little about me.
I think we're seeing some common themes here too in terms of the communities that you're serving, even though they may be rural or city, that just some poorer districts as well.
Yeah, and then the absolute need, poverty does not care when it comes to technology. We still need to actually be even more with the technology to showcase. Parents want to treat us like Uber, so having that technology handy, even if you're, you still get a phone if you're on food stamps. So being able to know where your kid's getting picked up, if it's the back lot of a Walmart or an apartment complex, it still matters.
Yeah, that's good. Debbie, last but not least.
I've been with Farwell Schools for 25 years as a driver, was assistant transportation director for almost 3 years, and then I got the transportation position 7 years ago. Our district's about 185 square miles. We have just over 1,000 students, and I have 10 regular routes, and we have 778 kids that we haul. So 10 very full buses and running shorthanded like I'm sure most everybody else is. But yeah, we've been using Transfinder since 2014.
That's great. And for those of you who are logging in, I wouldn't mind if you just punch in what state you're watching from. And if you want to tell us, Tony always likes to know temperature. So I don't know if you guys, it's 51 degrees here in upstate New York. What is it like in Maine?
We're about the same as you guys right now. So I always pay attention to New York as well because I used to live there. So I am feeling for our Florida friends right now. I have family down there, so everyone's safe.
Yes.
So
Yes,
definitely thinking about the weather down there a little more than up here. It's beautiful in fall in New England at the moment.
Very good. How about Montana? What's it like there?
Sunny and 62 degrees.
Oh, very good. I'm getting a lot of lists here. Bruce is in Maine. He said it's 40s there, so he must be a little further north. Brett giving me some more specific details. Painesville City Schools in Ohio, 1,033 kids, transport about 7 square miles. Texas, 72 degrees. So going back to the weather here. Massachusetts, 60 degrees. Indiana, 63. And Missouri 78. We have a Missouri. Jared, does that sound about right? 78 degrees?
It's 70 where I am right now, but
Okay.
it's supposed to get about 88 today, so we'll see.
All right. Round Rock, 84 degrees. That's the winner so far. So thank you. So I'm going to ask, why don't we go right to our first panel, our first poll question, McKaylee, and talk about school openings and just how were their school openings. And I'm going to go down the line while we're doing this. And I'll just start. Anyone can jump in. I'm going to start with Alisa, and then we'll go to whomever wants to jump in. Alisa, how was your school opening this year? Alyssa,
Sorry,
can you hear me?
I'm unmuting myself. It's a whole thing. Our school opening was actually really, really good. We noticed, I would say 90% of what we do involves great communication. And so we really pushed on our schools to be partners in that communication to leverage our software. So our school opening, it was smooth. I would say you can always make it smoother. And those things are, did the parent tell you their daycare changed? Those are the things that get me every year. Like you knew your daycare moved and you didn't call us and you expected us to magically know. But besides those type of things, it was really smooth. The bus company said it was the smoothest they've seen, which was amazing. So we'll take that any year.
Absolutely. Laura, how about you? How was your opening?
I can agree with that. The communication was huge for us this year, and I've heard that from my contractor and from my secretaries that they felt like the lines of communication were open a lot more this year. I agree with the struggle of parents communicating their change because we have to route them as though they're going to and from home. And my unique situation was that I had not been here prior to this year, so the parents just assumed that the school knows and this is the way it's always been, you should have known. I'm like, well, I have not been here that long, you still have to communicate that. So just communicating to parents that this they're supposed to tell us every year, not just the first time it happens. I can't assume you didn't move or that your mom is still watching the kids or that you didn't take them out of daycare. You have to tell me those things every year. Same thing with custody agreements. So that was my biggest struggle. I think 2 days before school started, I had 100 students I had to change for alternate transportation because parents were freaking out that their bus wasn't what they thought it should be.
Wow. And you late nights?
A lot of late nights. I put in over 100 hours of overtime the 4 weeks in August.
Wow. Well, Christmas is coming, so. How about you, Candi? How was your opening?
It was pretty good. I started in July with a form sent out to the parents saying, please let me know if this is where your address currently is. This is where we'll pick the student up, drop them off. If there's any changes, please let me know. Of course, there is those parents that are on. Be sure to send that in. And then you always have that allotment of parents that, oh, they know, things should stay the same and they didn't send information in. So that was a struggle trying to get that maybe going more again next year. Stop Finder, I used that. That really helped out a lot. And so that helped with the first 2 weeks of not as many phone calls from parents saying, hey, where's the bus? Because we got them on board last year and we got them more on board this year by putting it out social media. Our newsletter goes out to every mailbox in our district. And so that really helped get the
So
parents on.
Stop Finder, so you have GPS with Stop Finder so they can actually track the bus. And then
Yes.
you also have the bus information itself so they know where the stop is, what time it is, all that detail. You don't have to send postcards out and all that business.
Yes, exactly. Yep.
Awesome.
They
Awesome.
track the
And how's
bus.
the adoption rate?
We have, I would say, out of our 445 students that we transport, I believe we have 278 parents that are using the Stop Finder, and some of them use it daily, and they have multiple notifications for themselves as to the bus is getting to this location, give me a notification. The bus is getting even closer to our house, give us a notification.
Great.
So they are using it quite well, and every once in a while, we'll see that a contact will drop off. I get a phone call right away on Stop Finder. Can you check out my Stop Finder and see what's going on? So I know. I even had one of them today.
Very.
And so they are using it, and it is helpful because there are times I have to get in a bus and drive a bus, and so nobody's here to answer the phone. So that helps.
That's great. That's awesome. And I think that, we keep hearing, I think that when you have more parents using it, and then there's that little bit of FOMO, fear of missing out, that parent going, what are you doing? Oh, I'm using the Stop Finder. You're not, they're at a soccer game. I mean, you can just see that hopefully, spreading just by word of mouth even. I know you're doing all you can to get the word out. Brett just sent a message in here that he's got about 150 signed up out of his 650 parents. They're doing another push. And you hope that also just parents rubbing shoulders, you going to PTA meetings and all these other things that, the word gets out more. And then there's a younger group that's used to, someone mentioned Uber or Alisa, their comfort level with this stuff is so much more through the roof that they're going to want it. They're going to want it. So that's great, Candi. How about you, Debbie? How was your opening? Jared, I'll get to you last. Debbie, how was your opening?
Went really, really well. I had some back end issues about 2 weeks before school started where my auto import I thought was not working, but I got a hold of the tech guys and they're like, nope, it's going through, but you're not getting any information. So I had to work with the tech guys at the school side to figure out what was going on. And they finally got it fixed 3 days before school started. And so I had over 100 kids to get routed and get all the information put out. I was able to do it because Transfinder is just so awesome with that intuitive stuff that makes it just happen. It's magic, right?
That's good.
But the first day of school, I had lists out for each building, and there were adults standing on the sidewalks telling kids which bus they were on, because for some reason from June to August, they can't remember what bus they ride. But we had all the kids were on the right
Summer
bus.
Slide, right? Isn't that
That's
Summer
right.
Slide, right?
That's right. Yep. But all the kids got on the right buses and got home, and we had absolutely no issues.
And you said that you liked the sheet you had. I didn't mean to cut you off. I'm sorry.
Okay. That's okay.
That you had the sheets printed out alphabetical order so they could actually made it they weren't hunting through and
Right. Yep. They're alphabetical by each building. We have 3 different buildings, so they were alphabetical by each building, so they could just look through them really quick and find kids if they needed to find them. So I love reports.
Yes. And I talked to somebody a couple weeks ago who loves Viewfinder on his phone, who was an assistant principal. Alyssa's shaking her head. And so, like he said, that the phone has been awesome. And so just for his building, he can not have a lot of noise from other buildings. And Alisa, I got to go to you just because you're shaking your head so animatedly.
Yeah, no, Viewfinder was our secret weapon this year as far as making sure assistant principals and dean of students had access. We did an opt-in for our high school transport, and we needed a kid if they were sitting in the office of that dean or whoever to be able to see that transportation. And it works really great. It's still working. So we have secretaries calling up. I see this kid hasn't been assigned transportation. I'm like, because the import, I know exactly when it imports into the system. I always laugh because we know we could make the import go multiple times a day, but we always tell them it's midnight. And it allows us that full 24-hour time frame to get them truly on busing. And then it's that reassurance without me having to send an email. Because when you get to a certain level, you're like, I don't want to send 600 emails today. That's just not. So having a piece of software available like the Stop Finder, like the Viewfinder, huge. And I know we're working on next steps to have that sync to our Google authentication, which means I don't have to manage some rights and responsibilities. So huge, huge, huge for our district, and makes it so they're a little self-supportive, and you only have to deal with the 10% that refuse to comply, and they figured out real quick that this is a tool for them.
Awesome. Awesome. That's good stuff. Jared.
For us, we had a good start this year. The last couple of years for us here in Missouri, it's been unseasonably hot, probably 105 degrees.
Wow.
We run an un-air conditioned fleet of buses. So it's one of those things that everybody, those parents that didn't want to reach out all of a sudden are reaching out because they don't want their kid to sit on the bus for an extra 30 minutes while we're trying to sort it out at the end of the day, because our kids also forget what bus they rode. So I'm glad to hear it happens to other people, and they'll also forget what bus they rode. They rode a bus to school that first day, but they couldn't remember what it was either. So, but yeah, I mean, we had our openings this last couple of years have been very smooth and been doing well.
That's great. That's great. So we're going to go to just the results on the poll. I do have a second poll question we're going to do pretty quickly after. How was your school opening? So the number one answer was good overall. So, okay, best ever. We got no best evers. Well, we do have our panelists who have said that. So we got a few that can maybe share what they did that made it the best ever. Some minor issues, hiccups, 45%. That's the bulk then, 95%. And unfortunately, there are 5% that said that it was poor and they had serious issues. So the goal here is to help minimize that so that next year that doesn't happen again. So maybe we can even learn more about what those issues were. You can definitely feel free to throw those in. And if there's somebody you want to ask how they would handle something that maybe you dealt with, that would be great. So you kind of already alluded to this a little bit, but when you discuss in your mind and you think like, say your superintendent comes to you and say, hey, how was your opening? And you say it was smooth. What constitutes a smooth opening? I mean, what would you say are the key ingredients or key factors that, is it just everybody gets to school and back home safely? That's a bar right there, safe. Is it on time performance? It doesn't have to be like just day one. I'm talking about, that first week or two we're in.
I would say, yes. Rick, just to shoot us off on this one, I would say part of it is like sheer number of phone calls and emails. In the first few days, especially, and it's interesting. I mean, you have your younger students that are coming brand new to your district. You're going to get a ton of phone calls, even if they get reassured by a principal and everyone else. So I know for us, I gauge a little bit in the first few days on phone calls and emails on the smoothness of it. And then usually, again, it goes back to communication. So identifying really quick, did the pre-K person that's in charge of pre-K not give out the information I gave them? So making sure, so I started, we've been doing this for a number of years in my district, but we really start and say, when do we need this information to families, knowing that there's going to be a week or two process in which they will flip out because they forgot to read it. And so we back up our planning from there. And so I am pushing on schools towards the end of the school year for key information of those grades that are rolling to another school, all of that information to really get a strong foundation. So I've learned it's more limiting the pain points. You kind of know those people that will forget. Those ones are definitely huge. And as a small district going into a bigger district, it definitely compounds upon itself. So a lot of it for us is doing that. We actually did not publish our routes in the newspaper this year, which is something I was like, I am going to be persecuted in a school committee for this. But because Transfinder was so smooth, I could send out letters right from the Transfinder Plus to the seniors, to the high school folks to let them know. So for us, it came down to that communication piece 100%. And I still find my pain points that I know next year, I've already got a plan in place to how to get them to comply real quick, or they're going to have a rough day. Those that chose to go their own path found themselves on the side of their school buildings on day one with 200 kids around them, and they realized real quick that's not what they wanted. So For me, it's not that you want to watch a system fail, but we found our advocates at the schools real quick. And I keep telling them we're a department, we're not a person, and we run as a team. And so I'm seeing that paying off finally with our busing being respected more, with our routes and everything. So it's like a multi-year kind of plan. I'm doing the slow roll on the district is what I told them. And then ultimately it's that much smoother when we go out. So less phone calls at the beginning of the year is what I saw. It died down within a week. And the calls we were dealing with were parents with separation, alternative address, and changes. So I'm like, I'm happy to deal with that versus a kid that doesn't have a ride. So we did our bulk, and that even included our special education kids. We brought on 40 new kids that we didn't even know what their disabilities were when we got them. And we found out real quick and made sure that happened smooth. So seeing all of that taken care of in 2 weeks from school opening was really huge and allowed us to go back and focus on those databases and cleaning up data. So it was great.
Awesome. Anybody else want to jump in about what constitutes a smooth opening? I like that. Less calls, less emails. Others?
I agree with her on that. Yeah, but definitely fewer phone calls from parents and the emails, and I really feel like communication was key. So, and Transfinder made that easy.
Great. Jared, go ahead. Thank you very much, Laura.
Like with Alisa there, when you're dealing with larger number of students, the phone calls and the emails wear you down. And so for us, it's always amazing that if we're 3 minutes late, they'll start calling. And so those first few days of school, you know, when you have 2,200 kids on a bus and you're trying to get them home and you're trying to deal with the other issues that come from that, you know, so the big thing for us is we got to get back down to where we're on time. And then that, because we don't have the GPS on the buses, and we will send out mass notifications. And then if it's like other schools, you get inundated with phone calls about your kids. So they'll see it's a call from the school, so they won't answer it. And so for us to get to where we need to be, and that's what's saying, you know, to our time is our biggest matrix that we try to judge by.
Great. That's anybody else?
I also wanted to add one thing. We played dirty. And when I say I played dirty is I have a radio in my office connected to all the buses, but they gave me this super powered radio connected to all administration in the district. And all I have to do is turn a knob and I get the school administration radio. I only use that when they're misplacing a kid. But those type of things, they can't even hide from me now, because I used to get those, you call the school and they wouldn't answer because it's dismissal. So I found a way to get right through, which also, it made that so those kids that would have gone around the block 3 times and returned to the school because no parents there, we were able to get through the administration who got through to the parent. And just like that, those kids made their connections. So we were on time. So it's dumb things like that that have really changed things.
Brett said he's got a double radio too. So there you go. Anybody else? Candi?
Yeah.
Yes.
Within 2 weeks of us starting school, I had 15, 16 kids move in on one route. And because the buses are so full, I had issues. So to be able to go in there and like just circle up a bunch of stops to move them to another route without having to actually reroute all those kids. I mean, I had it done. I started it like lunchtime-ish, and by afternoon I had the notices going home to the families that were switching buses that tomorrow you're going to be on a new bus. And if it wasn't for the routing in Route Finder, I mean, that would have been a lot longer process. So I know that within the first couple of weeks, that saved me a ton of time.
So I'm going to go to Candi first on this. So Candi, just be aware, I'm giving my long entry here to this. But what tips? So we have, I think it was 5% that said they had a rough opening. What tips would you give to somebody about, so things maybe you learned this year, because, Alyssa's already mentioned, even though it was a good opening, there's still some things she's already doing to think about next fall opening. What tips, and anybody can jump in on this, but I'm going to start with Candi, would you give to help have a smooth opening? Are there, we talked about during a dry run yesterday, and I remember which one mentioned it. Somebody mentioned about bringing drivers in to look at the route. So I want to get to that. Debbie, we'll get to you after Candi. Any other tips that you might give to have a smooth opening?
Well, that's what we do too, is we bring the drivers in, have them give me their opinion on the routes, even go drive the route so that even new kids added to their list, they can see where the kids are, because we do a lot of door-to-door pickup with the rural area that we're in. And so to see where the bus stops are, yep, those bus stops will work. Putting up signs in your bus to let your bus students know that they're on route number 1, so that when they get off at the school, you let them know, look, this is the bus that picked you up. This is the bus that you will come and find. We are lined up 1 through 10. So come find me. I'm your driver for today. That helped a lot because otherwise, yeah, this big yellow bus picked them up at their driveway. They don't know what bus it was. Parents do not know what bus picks them up. And so even though they have a majority of the stop finder parents have that, what route they ride, they still don't know what bus route they're on. So we had the bus drivers give that feedback to the kids as they got off at the school. We are fortunate, we only have 1 drop in our K-12 district here. So every kid gets addressed as they get off the bus, K through 12. So that is some things that really worked well for us to help things be smooth in the first week. And the stop finder helped with the phone calls, the emails. I had a few chats, messages back and forth, and
You do the 2-way.
Yes, so that they can message me if I'm out on a route. I still get that through my email. If I'm at a bus stop, I can respond to it, or I can forward that message saying, hey, this child's not riding on Route 5 today, and I'll forward that message to that driver. So it is very helpful tool.
You know, some districts have said, and it's not disparaging because every district has its own unique flavor, personality, but where they are afraid to turn on the 2-way. They don't mind the 1-way pushing, but they don't want to have it go 2-way because they're afraid that it might be, afraid's the wrong word, but they're concerned about, you know, being inundated. And then others have said, but this is how we can dispel concerns and, you know, kind of deal with an issue, and they feel heard, you know. Debbie, you were shaking your head.
I always shake my head.
Well, you bring in your drivers and go over.
We start in the spring, so usually sometime in April, I bring them in 1 at a time and I have them look at their route, because everybody knows throughout the year you keep adding stops, and sometimes as you add stops, you kind of get things out of whack. So we always look at it one-on-one and decide what's the best way to go with this route. Should we change anything? And then while I'm working on stuff over the summer, I'll get things changed. But I always set up a sandbox for a database that we can go in and play with and see how things will look if we do this, or what happens if we do that.
And it doesn't mess anything up that you have.
Doesn't mess up my current stuff. It's just something to play with. So
very good.
Yeah.
Anybody else in terms of tricks that you would, again, tell those folks that maybe they're watching you, maybe they're a little bit like, oh, I'm glad you guys had a nice opening.
So
what would
for
you tell
me is more on the technology side, as far as I like all my kids in their correct buckets is what I call it. So are you a gen ed student? Are you a specialized student? And so I spend a ton of time getting all my kids in the right things. So when I go to make my routes, I make sure that only my absolute, the kids that are supposed to be on there should be on there. So I spend a lot of time working with special education department. It's also helping me when I do field trips or after school, because they're notorious for sneaking that specialized student on a vehicle they shouldn't be on. And I'm like, I'm not going to get sued because you forgot. So we spend a lot of time getting them in the right buckets, but that also means I get lists from schools. And so I honestly use an import function into the router directly and user-defined fields to help me with that, which has been really, really tremendously. I used to go through one by one and select a kid and then right click and mass update them. And I'm like, forget this. So I've been doing massive imports into the system And that saves me buckets of time. And then I can focus on that part of sitting with those drivers and saying, how do you want to change this? And I know 100% absolutely the information we're looking at is actually accurate, because nothing's worse than when you sit down with them and they say that kid's never there in the afternoon, ever. They've not been there for 15 years. And you're like, well, it's a blue dot. It's a blue dot. And so getting those right out of the mix from the gate. And then actually what that did is it actually gave me a map of, wait a second, we're busing a lot of kids between one school that really belong to this other school because of our residency lines. So I was able to sit down with our superintendent and say, all your added district agreements that you're doing with these families are really making all the bus routes longer. And I just watched overnight, the little dots went from one school right to the school they were supposed to be. They actually enforced it with the families. So now I actually am transporting the kids that I'm supposed to. The bus routes, instead of weaving between boundaries, are going where they're supposed to. But it all started with that hardcore data of, I always say to the superintendent, just tell me what bucket I'm putting this kid in. And from there, the technology handles the hard stuff. So that has been amazing for us.
That's awesome. Jared, go ahead. That's great. Thank you, Alyssa.
The people that I talk to that have poor openings most of the time have a lack of buy-in from the people above them. So basically, nothing starts until you can get your administration on board. And when you can tell them you can reduce complaints and reduce problems, you've got to get the administration to buy in. And then once you get the administration to buy in, then you can get the buildings to buy in. And then once you get that stuff done, and then ultimately the parents are going to buy in, and once they see what your culture is like, that's what helps you the most. And some of your comments you talked about, we didn't want to turn on the two-way communication. Those are places, I say those, and that's, not the right term, but basically people don't want to communicate back to people. And then if you're viewed as a department that won't communicate, then that puts a wedge between you and the people you're serving. So, it all starts with the buy-in from your administration. And then from there, you eventually roll it out. And that makes a huge difference once you're able to get that done.
That's great. Anybody else? Any other thoughts on that? All right, we got another poll question. McKaylee, if you could pop that up there. And you guys have touched on this a lot, actually, in this webinar. What could have made your opening better? Better technology, increased staffing, more advanced planning, leadership, better resources, newer buses, radios. So we're not including radios with technology. Time in that. Anybody want to take a stab at that for you and your district? I know I can't see anybody, so I'm just going to pick on Debbie. Debbie, what could have made your opening even better? You had a great opening, but hey, we can always be better.
Having enough bus drivers instead of having to use subs all the time. I usually have enough subs, but when you're popping people between routes, you don't get the consistency that you need, especially at the start of the year. And my superintendent also drives bus, and he is feet first. If I need help, he's out here driving a route, he's taking a trip, he does whatever he needs to do, because he understands that transportation is the most important thing for these kids to get their education, because if we can't get them in here, they're not going to get educated. So he wholeheartedly supports us in everything we do, which is awesome.
That's great. How about you, Candi? What would be your what would contribute to a better opening for you?
It would be having more bus drivers also. We have the resources, we have the radios, we have the technology, and our superintendent also is a bus driver, sub-bus driver for us, and he loves the Wayfinder technology. Before we were using clipboards and paper to take attendance on the buses and then trying to figure out where the stops were and drive the bus at the same time. And when we went to Wayfinder, and that maps it out for you, he was sold at the first look at it. And then he drove the route, or one of the routes, and he had no issues at all. Being away from it all summer long. He drove a week ago, being the first time back to it. He even, a new student got on to ride with a friend. He added that student onto the route and to the stop, and it went well. He has, as a advocate for it, he highly recommends it because being a sub driver, you're on this route, that route, every route. And then we also use it in our summer migrant program to transport kids from out of district into our district. They use it also. We have multiple stops in the city of Billings, and that manager of that program highly recommends it also. Wayfinder is just a key thing. It's just a great tool also. Along with, in the summer program, we also use the stop finder. So
And what's great about Stop Finder and Wayfinder is you can literally pinpoint the bus, where the bus is. And like, it's not just regions, it's actually like the bus is 3 minutes away. So
yes.
Attendance, I don't know, do you take attendance on your bus?
We do. We take attendance on the bus when they get on in the morning and when and the time that they get off at the school. And so the same thing in the afternoon. They are attendance when they get on the bus in the afternoon and when they get off at their location, at their bus stop. So it is great tools for us to use and information to refer back to. If you need to know what time did the kid get off at home, the parent sends a message through Stop Finder. If they don't see it on their phone because they may have a glitch or something, did my child get on the bus? Yep, they got on at 3:47, and the buses departed out of the school at 3:55.
That's awesome.
Yep.
I'm going to read a comment, but I want the others who haven't spoken yet, if you want to jump in on what would have made your opening even better, be ready. I'll go to you in a second. This is from Michael, who said that Jared nailed it. We're a contractor and our clients' transportation departments won't buy into the benefits of using this platform with us. Transfinder, Wayfinder, Stop Finder, Viewfinder, which solves so many time-consuming issues. I did not write this. This is written by a guy named Michael. Also, driver shortage has been a continued problem, which we talked a little bit during our dry run, that even in the rural districts, I believe, Debbie and Laura, you both said you still we're able to use Route Finder Plus to do some combining routes. So if you want to jump into that, but anybody want to take any more, make another comment about just what could make the
So I'm thinking of Michael and his comments. So I was in an issue where I'm like very envious. I want to be in like Candi's district with the Wayfinder because that's the one piece we're missing in my district right now. So we are using the clipboards. It looks like MapQuest from 1990s in my district, and it scares the heck out of me. So all those dry runs, we need them. But when I add a student on, I pray that they don't forget. But when I'm thinking about Michael, actually one of the biggest things that was in my favor, but it didn't feel like it at the time, is we got a new student information system person in charge of it. And they didn't know how to connect the student information system to our technology that we're using, and it's not as robust. And so because of that, that made their old system completely inoperable, and they had nothing to use. So it forced the envelope, because what I found is not having that sophistication that the Route Finder has and Transfinder has, it actually pays off. I'm like, I should be driving this in my system as a transportation director. I shouldn't be using their spreadsheets and their Excel and their Google, because I have something way better, that I have those kids that have 5 transportation plans. So I am sitting here listening to Candi going, that is what I want. That would make my opening smooth, would be having Wayfinder fully integrated in our system. I run into short bus drivers not having them, or as soon as you get a new one, like one leaves. That's pretty classic as well. So you're never gaining ground on your buses. So I do think about things that would make my job so much easier is obviously the Wayfinder. Sorry, I have a barking dog, and having that technology available.
Well, you just got to forward the link to this webinar to the school board and your superintendent. You'll be good to go. Anybody else? Let's go to the survey results real quickly here. See what would have made your school opening better? And the #1 number was more advanced planning. Okay. We'll get to that a little bit. Panelists, if you just be ready, I'm going to ask about, how soon do you start? Do you have a process that you do certain things in January even, or whatever? What's your process in advanced planning for the fall opening? #2, it looks like, was better technology. #3 is increased staffing. So a lot of times that's a higher number. So that's #3 here. Leadership and better resources are tied at 6. Very good. So let's talk about planning a little bit. How soon is there such thing as too soon? No. Okay. Who wants to jump in and talk a little bit about, Debbie? I'm going to go to you first. I'm just going to pick on you because you're in my right corner over here. And then anybody else can jump in. But when do you start thinking about fall opening?
When we start planning in April, I mean, I've already got some things that I want to do, but I'm getting the driver input, and it's constant. Like if something's going on now, I've got a list of things that I need
even
to do.
now.
Yes.
For next fall.
For next fall. Yep.
11 months
constant.
down the road.
Yep.
Okay. So what do you have? Are you putting this in like a Word doc, Excel? You just got a handwritten notes?
No, I have Word documents or Google documents. Yeah.
I had one person that talked about handwritten notes. I thought she was great, but boy, she got hammered. Like, what are you doing in paper? She goes, well, I put it in something eventually. But anyway, anybody else want to talk about their planning? And this is like on my to-do list every year. And
I would say that there is definitely and maybe I'm speaking for me, but if there is definitely a calendar in my head on when I need certain things. So it's like knowing when your after school programs start and backing up that, like how long does it take you to route? How long does it take you to meet with the bus drivers? How long does it take you to feel confident that the communication's out? So I take that drop dead deadline and I back up from there. And so then you find yourself into spring, just like Debbie, or you find yourself in the fall saying, was that a good opening? And so I recommend, if you haven't already, do that post-mortem opening of school where you sit down with your administration and just say, what could have worked better for you? Because you might thought it was great and they're like cringing on the sidelines. So I know for me, that's how you kind of identify those systems that are broken, or if it's like that one kid that you know for the next 12 years, you're going to handhold them on the first day of school. Because we all have those kids as well that you're like, oh, our systems are fine. It's that kid that's making decisions I need to help with. But that has worked really good for me. So then I feel like my administration feels like they have buy-in, even though they know we're controlling, but they feel like they have a voice and a say, and that's helped us. But everything for me is way backed up. And then I realized that a lot of my people need hard deadlines. So I've learned that as much as I'm like, well, I could use it here or here, I'm like, no, I'm going to be mean and say I need it here. And that's helped me because I was like working overtime and too many hours. And so I was like, I need to be good to me as well. So that means factoring in that it's already going to be crazy. So if you can factor in backing it up an extra week, so you get your vacation or you get your time to process everything. I've learned that over the years too. Just build that into your master plan as well.
Sometimes when you're mushy or fuzzy deadlines, then it doesn't feel like it's a real, I know somebody that told me on an unrelated, it's a trip finder, another product about field trips, that they can do instantaneous approvals, but they haven't let the teachers know that. So they said, we still want them, they're used to 2 week note, 2 week advance notice. I'm not going to tell them otherwise, so that they still have that buffer. So that's good stuff, Alisa. Jared, how about you planning? What's when do you start?
We really start in earnest for the fall in April. That's when our school starts doing all of the kindergarten testing coming in. So that's when they'll give us the information to know where those kids are going to be living. So we can start, making decisions from there about what we're going to do from routes and stuff. And we start the planning then, but realistically, we start the first week of July, working on the routes and everything for the next school year, because I'm sure we're like everybody else, you've got to get through the school year, then we have a week break, and then we go straight to summer school. And then, which is a whole different routing scheme. and we have to accomplish that mess. And then as soon as summer school's over, we take about a week for ourselves, and then we just jump right straight back into getting ready for school.
Very good.
That's exactly what we do also. We start about July, because when in the spring, it is so busy with sports and drivers going multiple different ways, and me subbing on all those bus routes to even think about the fall. And then we have a week off, and we do a summer school program for 6 weeks. We bus route those, and then usually July, it's usually like the second week in July that I take a week off and then start getting all the information of the young kids. Kindergartners, you know how those are. Those parents don't believe in our school district anyway, enrolling them. We usually start August 20th in that area. So the kindergarten parents, some of them like to get the jump start and get the kids enrolled, but we have sometimes 20 to 30 kindergartners that are enrolled on the very first day of school.
Wow. Wow. When
And
is the
then-
first day of school for you this year?
This year it was the 20th of August.
Wow. Okay. See, in my head is always still, we just did I found a survey about how many districts in the country when school openings are. And in New York, we're after Labor Day, but we're in a minority. So it's, mid-August to late August is the majority of the country. So I know, Laura, one of the things that you want to do planning next year is not to have to implement Route Finder Plus for the first time.
All right. I'm really looking forward to seeing what a real school year, back to school start time looks like, with everything already being set up and being able to just tweak it instead of completely building it from the ground up like I did this year. I'm really looking forward to that, but I am loving all the feedback everybody's giving for timelines and what that should look like, so I can start having those lines of communications open with my admin team and secretaries and eventually parents as well. So yeah, it's all good.
And you also have, again, your husband is a school bus driver, and he has given you like unfiltered feedback.
Right. Yeah, as all husbands do, right?
So some thoughts about what he as a driver wants to see in a
Right.
smooth opening as well. What kind of things has he shared with you?
He had said in the past that, nobody ever asked the driver or the contractor what works and what doesn't work. And when I got this role at the school, it was one of the first things that I wanted to fix, because we're not the ones with boots on the ground, for these picking up these students. So I need their feedback. And if something doesn't feel right, I need to know it. I'm not going to be stubborn and not listen, unless it's something that I know it can be done. They just don't want to do it. It may not be ideal, but it can be done. And in some instances it can't be. And I'd like to know that in advance to avoid safety issues and concerns. But one of the big thing was, just consulting with the drivers and the bus contractor when we can, so that we can avoid some of those other issues. And when because we consolidated 2 buses this year and had to put them on routes. And the first thing I did was call the contractor and say, what do you want me to do with these kids? And he came in and sat with me, and we split up the routes.
That's awesome.
Mhm.
That's awesome. So next year it's going to be a super smooth year, right?
Yeah, I really can't wait to see what that looks like.
Has anybody here had to, because some of you have said that there are I have some things on my wish list. Has anybody had success in getting something you want on a wish list? And maybe you can share a tip, and then I'm going to ask you each to give me one takeaway that you would want somebody who's attending the webinar today, who sees it later when it's streaming, one thing that they can bring back to their office or back to their district administration. But before we get to that, so just be thinking about in the back of your head, was there anybody here that said, we really wanted this, maybe it's Wayfinder or StopFinder or something else, and if you could just give a sense, because we all know budgets are tight. I think that's not unusual. So, but somehow you were able to show them the value and how that was going to make for a smoother transportation operation, which they all do want. We know they do.
Sure, I can.
Anybody have? Yeah, please go ahead, Laura.
So, for me, it's good. you have to have a good relationship with your admin team. That is detrimental to you getting what you need. If they never see your face, you're not a blip on their radar. Like you have to have a good relationship with them. Same thing with your special ed director and if you don't have a good relationship with your special ed director, you're going to have nightmares in transportation because you're dealing with parents, you're dealing with van drivers, you're dealing with kids who need special things and you don't know. But in my instance, what made it so much easier was bringing in, when I had to sit down, because they have these, your sales pitches are great. You put the best people in place for those, but was bringing in my business manager to show her this is what they can do. And then also showing her what we're currently doing and how it wasn't working. So then being able to have her buy-in made it easier to talk to the superintendent, who was like, yeah, I'm on board, let's do it. So I mean, it's also for budgeting purposes. I think a lot of people don't realize how soon in the year that process starts. Like we're starting in January and February for budgeting, but if you come to them in May and say, I want to add Stop Finder, it's too late. They've already gotten their budget approved through things. So you have to work way in advance. And I think sometimes the miscommunication that nobody gets their expectations met because they're not working in the time frame that the business office works in.
So know the calendar, know the calendar in terms of like when budgets are, when you need to submit things.
And I keep a rolling tally. Like I've learned over this last year, keeping a tally of these are things we forgot to budget for this year. If I want it next year, I need to have these conversations about these things when the time comes up.
Very good. Well, I should tell you all too that you should be budgeting now for the annual client summit, which is going to be in Nashville in March. This is the time to start thinking about it. You're going to be getting a lot more information on the pricing and early bird and all that shortly. And Laura, I just got a note from Michael saying Laura nailed it. We want to pilot this before January 2025. This is Stop Finder, so districts can budget for next year. So very good. All right, I'm going to go for final takeaways. What's the one thing you want? And one thing I should add, and I don't do a lot of commercials, those of you know me, but often our solutions literally pay for themselves. Somebody was at NAPT, they sent me a note. They had just talked to one of our clients who said they literally saved $1 million. They literally we know a neighboring district right here in upstate New York that they gave us a number of $1.2 million. So if you it's very few things in life that actually pay for themselves. When I, get my Whopper, I don't want my wife to see this because every once in a while I sneak out and get a Whopper. It doesn't pay for itself. I usually pay for that in many ways. So anyway, it's very weird it's unusual that something actually pays for itself in spades. So I'm going to start with you, Laura, since you are on a roll. We'll go to Candi, Alisa, Debbie, and Jared. You can close us up if you don't mind. And Michael, again, just said it did pay for itself. It was not a phone call wasted. It would pay for itself in phone calls that waste time. That's what you're saying. So go ahead, tell us one thing you want attendees to take back to their office.
I think the big thing is just utilizing the tools that you have. For me, I had such a short window to implement Transfinder, Route Finder Plus, and Start of School. And utilizing my project manager, utilizing all the tools that Transfinder has for us at our disposal, including the community and all of those things are so important. You can sit here and work like Alisa said and do like one checkbox at a time, but if there's a better way, you work smarter, not harder, and you can do it. And the Transfinder team is amazing at making sure that you get what you need when you need it.
Great. Candi?
To get your administrators to buy in, get them on the buses, get them with their CDLs. They have to flip that clipboard to take that attendance of those kids on the buses and drive the bus at the same time. They'll realize that you can work smarter and safely by using the Transfinder software, the tools that they have. And when because of short staff everywhere, you're not able to be by a phone always. That Stop Finder is a great tool also. So I just say get your administration to buy in by having them be on the buses even a short period of time to see how it operates.
That's great. That's awesome. I love it. Alisa?
I would say, as much as some people are going to cringe with me saying this, that your parents that are your loudest complainers can be your toughest, most like vocal allies. So I always tell them it's not me making the decision, it's the policy or procedures of the school. And that gets them in front of the school committee, and that gets me that funding and those needs, because our parents are savvy. A lot of our parents are teachers. They know technology exists. And when I tell them, oh, we have it, we just can't utilize it to its maximum. Oh, I'm getting my allies. And then the superintendent's like, so what else can we do? So I'm playing the game, the long game. But I do find what everyone else has already said absolutely is something to have. And then those parents that become my allies, there's some parents you'll never win over. That's okay. But yes, we've seen a lot of traction there. And I would say absolutely to echo that the support from Transfinder has been incredible. I've been the annoying person. I mean, little features that are added on has made my job easier. If we could remove AM schedule and PM schedule separate, though, that would be amazing.
Get that to the right people.
Yeah, those little technology tweaks, but you're actively doing that. So even in the duration that I've used the software, we're being updated and we're being made relevant, and the software is updating with our needs. So I want to thank the team at Transfinder for doing that for us, because it makes my job easier. Thank you.
That's awesome. Awesome. Debbie.
I mean, same thing everybody's saying though, but use that tech support that you get, because I've had reports modified because I want it to be a certain way to get the right information that I need. And I can get in there and make some of those modifications, but I'm not the greatest at getting maybe everything I need. And it's a chat with somebody or set up a tech call and it's done. So the support that you get is just fantastic, and don't be afraid to use it.
Very good. Jared, close us up.
I'm going to say that you have to be your own biggest advocate. You have to be the one, that's the same thing everybody said, but to just use that word, you have to be the one to go out and say, this is what we need. I'm killing myself doing this. This is what we need to do. And when you can tie it to safety and efficiency, you can almost always get the superintendent or the school board on board behind it. So just go in and advocate for yourself, advocate for your people. And overall, when you're doing that, you're going to make every other kid or every kid safer. And that's what we're all about.
Awesome. Very good. All right. So next slide, please, if you could, McKaylee. We always are looking for stories. All the folks here on this webinar, your stories have bubbled up either through support. I know some of you have had graduations from our various solutions, and they say, Rick, you got to talk to Laura. You got to talk to Debbie. And Alisa too, and just kidding, Candi and Jared. Anyway, I didn't want to leave anybody out. So if you have a story, whether, by the way, if you're a client or not a client, you still matter and you still have stories. And if you have something that's worked for you, we want to share those. So this has always been a very open forum, and we want to just share the best practices from anybody that's out there that's doing this. So send it to mystory@transfinder.com. I'll probably follow up with you in an email and or get you on a panel. So just be aware of that. This was not a best practices webinar. This was just a special school opening because we had surveyed all of our clients. I didn't say this at the start. I probably should have. 93% of our clients that we surveyed had either the best opening ever or, it was a good, they would say good overall. So it was very positive. And then we were like, well, what can we do to help just, foster more good openings, is just let them share their stories. So that's kind of where this all bubbled up, was literally from this survey we had. We do have our second best practices webinar in the 2-part series featuring the top transportation teams. And so I would definitely encourage you to join us for that, October 24th. And then we'll close out the year with some more topics. If anybody has a topic they want, by the way, just send mystory@transfinder.com and say, hey, I would really like you guys to cover this. Then we will, we want to respond to that. So that's it for today. I want to thank all of our attendees for taking time out to join us. And I, of course, want to thank our panelists for taking time. We did the dry run yesterday, and just, all the feedback you gave. I hope that you all have a great rest of your day, but thanks again for joining us.
Thank you.